Hello, good evening, everyone. Good evening, our viewers at Connect Africa. So today, this is our first live transmission at Connect Africa, and tonight we'll be discussing on the current UN UNHCR resolution on Ethiopia, and also Africa's partnership with different parts of the world, whether it's North America or China or anyone. So we have here with us Kwame Gonza, who is a media and PR director at Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute. He's no stranger here at Connect Africa. He shared with us on various African topics. And today again, he's here with us to share his views on those specific topics. Welcome, Kwame.
Thank you so much, Mahlet. Thank you very much. I bring warm greetings from the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute and Ghana and West Africa and Africa generally. I'm so glad to be on this platform whereby we continuously come and share the views which we have and to affirm also our position and where we want to see Africa going as young people, as the next generation. I do believe with all my strength that our generation is the generation that is going to change Africa, and this is because of certain things that are going on in the world. And the other thing is that there has been an increase in literacy rate of the Africans in general and as a people. So when we talk about the youth, for example, on the continent, we have, I believe that more than 80% literacy rate. So you can be assured that if the youth have risen to this level of literacy, then they're not going to be thinking like the people who are running the continent right now, who were born in the 60s. So there is a tendency by these people who are running the continent to think that they are going to be around forever. Like some of them, they are 87, 76. You go to Uganda and Ghana, presidents over there, they are 76. So their mindset is really different.
That's why
And
they
when
call it it's the old presidential clubs, the African
yes,
Union.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
but I
yes,
hope
yes,
things will change, and
definitely,
it is a time. There's a lot of awakening in Africa,
yes, yes,
especially
yes,
amongst the youth, and consciousness more than anything.
yes,
So if we keep on investing, changing ourselves, our family, and the youth, then
yes, yes. The other
we
thing
will
is that
just be fine.
what I have observed is that people like Prime Minister Abiy of Ethiopia, they almost belong to our
Exactly.
generation
Yeah.
of young people. So you can see the mindset. Our mindset is that we know what is going on in the world. We have watched this continent and its engagement with the external forces, external countries and empires and whatever groups, all over who have been coming. And we know what is right. We know what they have been doing. We know the stealing has been going on. So I think we cannot want to engage with external actors on the African continent in the same way. And I believe that this is what Prime Minister Abiy is trying to do also. So he belongs to this generation of ours that wants to see high-speed trains on the continent, wants to see industrialization on the continent, wants to see Africans solving their own problems, not some people from outside who don't have any special abilities to come here and tell us we should do this and this and that. Economic policies. Africa should be able to to charter its own way, economically, politically. People should not come from outside to be telling us
Yeah.
this is the right way to do, this is the right way to live, because we have lived here for a very long time.
Indeed. Yeah. So that was just only introduction, and there is a lot to say definitely as we dive
Yes.
through to our in our topics. So as I said in the beginning, our topics, the first one we are going to talk about is the UN human rights, the UNHCR council resolution just a couple of days ago or the day before yesterday, that went out, to investigate the human rights situation in Ethiopia. And just to remind you, it's to be recalled that it was in November, the result of a joint investigation by the Ethiopian human rights and also another international one. The result came out and it approved that there was no genocide that was committed, but of course it looks like whatever came out in that joint investigation was not what they are looking for, perhaps. So they still pushed for this human rights situation investigation in Ethiopia, and also Ethiopia has rejected immediately that it put it clearly that the government will not accept this. What's your comment on that? Also regarding it's called and initiated by mostly the European members of the European Union, but also we have members from Africa, from Asia. So we have seen that there were some Africa, although mostly they were not part of the one who initiated actually. But when it comes to the votes, we have seen a few, just less than a handful of countries, African countries, who had chosen to be abstain, but that abstain had costed, which is, they were able to pass that resolution. Share with us your comment, your view on that.
The United Nations as an organization that is supposed to be representing multilateralism all around the world, has been, you know, called on a number of times to reform itself. But this is an organization that has refused to reform itself to reflect the numbers of the countries, of the peoples, that it is supposed to represent. When you look at Africa, if I could say, it has the largest number of individual countries, of sovereign states that are represented at the United Nations. But Africans have slowly come to lose trust in this organization. To be honest, me myself, I lost the trust in this organization long time ago. When I look at the history of this organization, starting with the emergence of independent African states in the 1950s, people like President Kwame Nkrumah put a lot of trust in the United Nations and its ability to solve problems around the world. They invested a lot in it, a lot of capital in it, trust in it. Trusting that the organization will be able to solve the problems without favoring anyone. But when Belgium got to give the Democratic Republic of Congo its independence in the 1960s, and there was a mutiny, 6 months after Congo got its independence, and the United Nations was involved in some dubious actions in the Congo, in the killing of the first prime minister of the Congo, who was Patrice Lumumba. Kwame Nkrumah himself immediately lost trust in this organization called the United Nations. And the United Nations, in addition to that, has been in the Congo for the last 60 years since independence, the 1960s. And the claim is that the United Nations is in the Congo trying to stop the war for the last 60 years, to stop, rebels and stuff like that. But what we are realizing is that the interests of the colonial powers, the colonial exploiters, uh, I'm talking about imperialistic countries from Europe and the United States, what we have come to realize is that their interests are intertwined with the United Nations. Wherever the United Nations goes, their interests of these imperialists are, you know, in tandem. They are moving together. That they are pushing not the agenda of the majority of the countries of the world, but rather this United Nations has come to be a vehicle for imperialist, intentions and goals and objectives. And this is what we are seeing at the United Nations in New York when we talk about the inquiry, their push into the inquiry into the of the human rights situation in Ethiopia, and to buttress or to emphasize what I'm saying, you can see that even the countries which are pushing this mindset that there should be an inquiry in the human rights record in Ethiopia, they are Europeans and the United States, Canada, Australia, the same countries who are interested in continuing the legacy of imperialism, colonialism, and now this neo-colonialism. So they are having a lot of problems. This same United Nations has not pushed an inquiry into the killing of people. Millions of people have been killed in Iraq. Millions of people have been killed in Afghanistan. Millions human rights violations happened in Libya. The United Nations did not put up an inquiry in any of these, issues and bring people, even if it put up an inquiry, it should bring people to justice. The International Criminal Court, it should do its job, even though the United States is not a signatory onto the International Criminal Court. The individuals have to be brought because they are citizens of the world. We are citizens of the world. This is why it is called the International Criminal Court. Individuals like Tony Blair, George Bush, these people, some of them have died without being brought to justice. And when they go back to the United States after committing horrendous crimes and killing millions of people, like what happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, a lot of people have been killed. Like recently, when the United States was withdrawing from Afghanistan, a family was murdered, a family of almost 15 people with drones and bombings. So these are all human rights violations. In Sudan, the United States went and bombed the country, bombed the facilities, pharmaceuticals. These are the human rights violations which we are talking about. So when the United Nations does not bring these kind of things and conversations on the table and into inquiry and questioning of the United States and European countries, then the United Nations itself becomes a laughing stock. Because, like I said, they are not dealing with the old type of Africans. They are dealing with a new world. We are looking at the world in its entirety now because we know what they have been doing. We know these colonial countries, what they have been doing. We know these imperialistic countries, what they have been doing. What have they been doing? They have been killing people all over the world. They have been disorganizing people all over. They have been overthrowing governments in Nicaragua, disturbing sanctions. Sanctions are a violation of human rights. No one puts up an inquiry into the sanctions on Venezuela, sanctions on Zimbabwe. How many people have been violated their rights? People, when they don't have food, they don't have medicine. Bombing all over, throwing bombs all over. Obama throwing bombs, George Bush. All these presidents, they violated the human rights all over the world. But when it is Africans and they are trying to solve their problems, then neo-colonial projects are hatched and pushed through the United Nations. And then all of a sudden we are looking at human rights because it is in Africa. We are seeing the issue of Palestine. Israel is killing innocent Palestinians in Lebanon, all over. Israel has been bombing people, innocent people, children. Even on news, we see them. Who is putting up an inquiry? We have not seen even one person being bombed or a child being carried in Ethiopia. And we have seen images which have been opposed even by South Africa, has been opposing Israel and saying this is an apartheid state. You know, who puts up, where is the inquiry? We need the United Nations to first put these things, which we are first. The first violations should be brought on the table and discussed first. The racism, we look at the European Union and the Western countries. When a conversation was being started on to discuss the issue of racism, they vetoed it. They did not, second the discussion on racism. This is human rights violations. This is what is fueling the death of people like George Floyd in the United States, when he was, a knee was put on his neck and he died, and other Africans who have died. So the United Nations will not be taken seriously in its resolutions, and especially if those resolutions are touching African sovereignty. And the United Nations has not brought the Western countries on the table, and it has not passed resolutions to discuss the racism that has happened on our people and is happening on our people in the United States and Europe, the killing of innocent people in Afghanistan, Iraq, all these countries, Libya, the destruction of Libya. These are violation of human rights. How can you destroy a country? You deny people access to health, access to good roads, access to schooling. The country is now in chaos. We can look at Somalia here. The United States came there and destroyed the country in 1993. No one has held it accountable. So once the United Nations starts with the biggest violators of human rights in history, then we as Africans, I think we will take its resolutions on Africa seriously. But for now, I think that Africa has done really well, even though there is some countries which abstained, decided to abstain in this vote. But the majority of African countries have stood very well with Ethiopia, and the spirit of Pan-Africanism, I believe, has been extremely and well, demonstrated at the United Nations. And I think that Africans should continue to hold themselves in this, in this position and support each other. All those ones who are abstaining, I think they need to look at their foreign policy very well. African countries at the United Nations should not vote without consulting others. Our position as Africans should come either from the African Union at the headquarters. All of us should agree before we cast our vote on any issue concerning international affairs, and especially any issue concerning the African continent. We don't want to repeat a scenario like what happened in Libya, where Nigeria and South Africa voted for imposing a no-fly zone, a resolution on imposing a no-fly zone in Libya. And see what happened. Libya was destroyed, and terrorists now they started running all the way through Libya. They have gone all the way to Burkina Faso. They have gone all the way, we have been having a lot of chaos in the Sahel now. So the rebels, to the extent that they have reached Mozambique. And these are all issues that need to be looked at very seriously, because of certain countries, not understanding the implications of their, voting at the United Nations. Because if countries like Botswana, South Africa, and Nigeria had not voted for a no-fly zone in Libya, we would not be having this kind of chaos. If Africans had spoken with one voice and said we cannot allow anybody to put drones on African continent, any no-fly zone, no one is allowed. So if we had stood together, this kind of chaos should not have been unleashed in the Sahel. We are seeing a lot of rebels in Mali now, Niger, all over. A lot of disorganization. All these things are slowing down the African continent and the progress it is supposed to make, economically. And this is what imperialists want. The imperialists want to slow us down because they have realized that Africa now has some of the fastest growing economies in the world. And to slow us down so that we don't industrialize, they have to create chaos, because this is how they survive. They create chaos and steal our resources. The biggest countries in Africa, Nigeria, Ethiopia, when they see advancement, we are making advancement, we are growing very fast, like how Ethiopia has been growing, is the fastest growing economy in Africa and one of the fastest growing in the world. And this was in 2020, and it was projected even in 2021 to be the same. So they are trying to slow us down. This is evident. Recently, I was watching one of former Nigerian ministers in a recording which he made. President Shagari of Nigeria wrote a book, and he pointed out in the book that the Americans and the imperial powers and the Europeans did not want Nigeria to develop, because they thought that if Nigeria develops within the next, in the 70s, they thought that if Nigeria develops within the next 10 years with all the money and from oil, and Nigeria will not need any aid, and it will be able to help the other African countries. So they have to create some sort of chaos to try to fund one group. You remember we had the Biafra War. They fund one group so that it can destabilize the country. And this is what we are continuously seeing in Nigeria, that we have Boko Haram. Which kind of Boko Haram? I don't know. Boko Haram that cannot be finished by a full state of Nigeria, that cannot be cleared. I don't know which type of weapon and who is sponsoring this Boko Haram, that Nigeria cannot pacify this country and bring these people to book. It is ridiculous. Or ECOWAS. ECOWAS cannot bring these people to book and clear this problem so that there can be rapid economic development all over the continent. So I think these are things which we need to take on seriously and look at seriously, that these countries, they thrive on chaos. They thrive on chaos. And this is what we are seeing, that what they did in Nigeria in the 1960s and 1970s is what they are trying to repeat, to do to Ethiopia, because it has been the fastest growing economy right now. Industrialization, rapid industrialization, high-speed train, the biggest dam in Africa, seventh biggest dam in Africa. So they are trying to slow us down. They are trying to slow us down. And this is a deliberate effort, because this is how they survive. And they are declining. For a very long time, they have been declining. So all these are tactics. They failed in the media. Once they failed in the media, Africans have put up resistance against them with their propaganda and lies of the media, and they failed. The Africans have put up resistance against their military. They want to engage the military. Africans said, no, we will not allow, if they dare put military forces on African soil in Ethiopia. Africans also will engage, will respond, will come and defend Ethiopia. So these are fears. Now they are trying to be slick and use the United Nations. And the United Nations, they have been using it for a very, very long time to attack different countries. So I think that these are things which we have to understand. And it is very good. I repeat that it is very good that African countries have stood together to resist this kind of, a blackmail and hoodwinking us, trying to hoodwink us with human rights. We are not the biggest violators of human rights, in the world. The biggest violators of human rights are in Europe, are in the United States. They are not here on the continent. Africans, millions of Africans were killed in the United States. Leopard of Belgium, Hitler. All these people are not from Africa. So when you're talking about human rights, I think we as Africans understand much better about human rights than anyone and anywhere in the world. So this position and this resolution that was being, they were attempting to pass to blackmail Ethiopia, I think is hypocritical. The United Nations itself has become an organization that is hypocritical. It's not transparent. I remember recently they spoke of that they wanted to end hunger with around, I think, 6 billion. They wanted $6 billion to end hunger. And Elon Musk came out. Elon Musk, the richest person in the world, he came out and said if they can give him accountability, that they will end hunger with 6 billion, he will sell stock and give them the money. They failed. They failed to come up with that accountability. So they lack integrity. They don't have any transparency. When they go to the ground and they spend there 10 years, you will go there after they have withdrawn and you will not see what they have been doing. They spend most of their money on administrative costs, not operations. And this is an issue also which President Uhuru Kenyatta criticized it in, I think it was around 2019 or 2018 or 2019, that the United Nations, he doesn't really see what it is doing, World Food Program. He doesn't see what it's doing really, because they are driving big cars, 4x4 cars, V8 cars, and they spend most of their money on on administrative costs instead of doing the real work, the operations, and creating an effect on the ground for the people. So the people in Palestine are dying. They are being bombed by, they are being occupied. Palestine is being occupied. The United Nations is quiet and is concentrating on Africa, where they have told them that we don't need you here. We can solve these problems ourselves. The Palestinians at the other side, they need help from the United Nations. The United Nations should be in Palestine to try to solve the problems there, to bring Israel and the United States, which is giving Israel the weapons, to account for human rights violations in Palestine. In Yemen, the United States has been backing Saudi Arabia in bombing Yemen. Children are dying. They don't have anything to eat. Medicine, hospitals have been bombed, airports, ports have been destroyed. There is got to be accountability. If there's going to be people accounting for human rights violation, we should start from Europe. We go to Saudi Arabia, what it is doing. We go to Israel. These people should be accountable for the human rights violations which we see that are going on every day, every day. And instead, they should leave Africa to solve its own problems. I don't really see what even President Kagame spoke about it recently. And he said that if Rwanda was the one in the Congo to try to solve the problem would have been solved. He doesn't really understand why the Congo is not stable when the United Nations has been there for the last 60 years. He doesn't really understand, and he's just echoing the same sentiment that is held by other Africans. This is what we are thinking also. Why is the United Nations there? Then it should get out. So what we are trying to see is that Africa should solve its own problems. But the United Nations, at the same time, we see that it is pretending that it is working for others, is working for the whole world, all the peoples of the world. But at the same time, is an organization that has refused to reform itself. It is an organization that has refused to be democratic. It is a dictatorship that is being controlled by a few countries on the United Nations Security Council. It has refused. People like President Mugabe have been talking long time ago. The United Nations should reform itself to reflect the democratic values which they so much, make noise about in the world. Human rights. So that these things are reflected in the organization itself, which is being pushed to say that they are democratic. These countries are democratic. These countries care so much about human rights. It should push for the organization itself to be democratic, so that the African countries, which have 1.4 billion people, should be represented with the 2 seats on the United Nations Security. This is something which they have rejected. So we are seeing that the United Nations now has become an organization that is intertwined with imperialist intentions and objectives and goals, and these imperialist countries to come and exploit the African people. And we are saying today that we will not accept it. We will not continue to accept this. If the reforms have refused, we will not accept it. President Muammar Gaddafi, he suggested even that the United Nations should reflect the representation of the majority by shifting. We should remove the headquarters of the United Nations from the United States. Why do we have the headquarters of the United Nations in the United States for the last period of years? Why? There is a lot of countries which are willing, countries we should take it to India, take it to China, let it be rotating, bring it to Nigeria, bring it to Ethiopia. These are populous countries. So the United Nations seat should be rotating and coming all over the headquarters should be, these countries have the capacity to host the United Nations. Why is it? Maybe for 10 years or 5 years, each country should be given 5 years or 10 years to host the United Nations headquarters. Give it to India, maybe the most populous. So, but they are not doing this. They are concentrating on imperialist, neo-colonial objectives and pushing intentions of the United States and Europeans. And this is also what we are saying, that we will not agree. this kind of hypocrisy as Africans, we are rejecting it. We say we will not take it. We will not take this kind of thinking because we are new people. We have a new way of thinking as Africans and African youth, and we have a certain direction where we want our continent to go. And this is not the direction where we want it to go, where the United Nations wants to come and continue to intervene on the continent. So, Sister Mahlet, I think this is how personally I'm looking at it
But
as an
no,
organization.
thank you very much. That was really a good one. You kind of covered most of the things, including, it's time. We have been saying, and some leaders have been saying, it's time to reform the UN.
Yes,
Some civic society organizations are saying, I think we just have to keep on being persistent and consistent on that, and the UN has to be reformed. But two points just to reflect on them from what you said. If a couple of countries in Western Africa or close to North Africa did not allow a fly zone, what happened in Libya will not happen, right? And also the same thing, if this few less than a handful of countries did not choose to be abstain and actually were brave enough to say no to the UN, to the UNHCR to pass this resolution, the result would have been, really a Pan-African one.
yes,
Yes, there is a
yes,
change for most of the countries, to be brave enough and to say no. But still, those countries, the fact that they remain abstain, it has led for the resolution to be passed. It doesn't mean that
yes,
it's going to happen just because they passed it, but that Pan-Africanism spirit could have been, on a higher level, and it could have given a lesson to the UNHCR, one more time, that African are united and they are not dealing with the old Africans where they can just say the leaders whatever they want and they obey them. So that's one. So with regards to that, what would a country do, to have that united voice in the UN for Africans? What more Africans should do? And what will be, is it a responsibility of a member state of the African Union to lobby around individual sovereign states in Africa and present its issue, or should it be in a bigger scale, like AU's role to amplify this, to have one voice? Yeah. And the third one, it's is it time, if the UN has been consistently showed us that it is the voice of the few powerful countries in the world, not really for the rest of the countries in the world, then is it time for Africa to leave it? I mean, it has happened in a number of countries, and we haven't seen a change. And you can take ICC. It's always to bring those African leaders to court, not other, non-African countries, or even those in the Western countries, to bring them to that court, as Madiba, Nelson
mm,
Mandela said one time. It's the US who have actually committed the biggest crime in the world. So what do you say on that? One is what does a country should do? What should be the
mm,
role, to
mm,
have a united voice?
mm.
Second, what should be AU's role? And then is it time for Africa to leave the UN? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you very much for those questions. Yeah, I think that what countries have to do uh, has already been shown, but what by what Ethiopia has done. Once you define your position and you side with the Africans, then you can rest be assured that Africans will stand, behind you. What we are seeing that has been lacking has been leadership, and people like Abiy, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed in Ethiopia have shown that leadership. We have to insist I was listening to one writer and journalist who died a time ago from Ghana, and he said that we as Africans, and he emphasized it, and he said that we have to insist that neocolonialism is real, and colonialism, they are going to want to come back and do whatever they want to do. But we have to insist that we are independent people. We have to insist that we want to conduct our affairs. We have to insist that we are Africans. We are not, we are unique people. We are not that like the rest of the world. So you cannot come and tell us we should practice this kind of political system as if is universal. When you're talking about democracy, which is being pushed so much, this neoliberal democracy that is being pushed so much around the world, even in Europe is not the same. We have monarchs, in Europe. We have different forms of the democracy in Europe. But these guys, because they have this thinking that they will come in Africa and impose it on Africans with their own hidden intentions to fulfill their own objectives, they think it will work. And we are saying, this is where we are saying that it will not work anymore. It will not work. You will not impose something that is not even producing results in your own country. In your own country, there's a lot of chaos in the United States, a lot of chaos in Europe, divisions all over. Media, people, they hate each other. Politicians are fighting against each other. People are dying. In the United States, now we are coming to almost 1 million people who have died of COVID. So that means you have a problem with your political system. So if you have a problem with your political system and you are pushing on us the same political system, we are going to say no. And even now we are saying no, this system, it will not work for us. So African countries now have to start defining and identifying themselves with Africans. And this is what the Prime Minister Abiy has shown. This one, I will repeat it without, without fear or anything, that the Prime Minister Abiy has shown what is supposed to be done. African problems should be attended to by African solutions. And he insisted that this is not a United Nations issue. This is not a United Nations problem. This is an African Union problem. The Africans have to come. So this is the insistence which I was telling you, which I just said a few minutes ago, that one Ghanaian journalist and writer said we have to insist that we are Africans, and we have to insist that we are independent. We will be able to solve these problems. And this is what, this is the kind of leadership which we want to see on the continent going forward. We don't want this kind of leadership, they don't define their position. Museveni, Nanado, they speak a different thing and they are doing a different thing. Ramaphosa in South Africa, they only come out to speak, against the injustices, economic injustices against our people when they have been attacked. We want people to define themselves without fear. Besides a person like Nanado, 76, Museveni, 76, what are you scared of that you are scared of dying? You are 76 years. If Nkrumah died at 62, he was deposed from power. He's in his, 40s. So what, you are 76, for Christ's sake. President Biya in Cameroon, 86. What is it that you are scared of, that you have grown old and you cannot even speak the truth to defend your people? So this is, we, the young generation, the new generation of Africans who want to see Africa free. This is the kind of leadership we say we will not accept. We cannot continue to have this kind of leadership of old people like this who have refused to define themselves with Africa. And this, one time they are in the imperialistic camp, and one time they are speaking things which talk about Africa in feverishly, in a good way. Another time they are working with the imperialists. So these kind of people who don't have a defined position, I think we have to reject them. And I think that Prime Minister Abiy has shown the right way to go. African countries, they have to stand and mobilize the whole continent if there is a problem. If there is a problem, and all of us, even if they have not mobilized us in our different countries, this continent belongs to us. Any hurt on any part of this continent, it affects all of us. Like we said, what happened in Libya has affected the whole of Sahel. It has affected, Burkina Faso, Togo, all these countries, Ivory Coast. It has affected even up to Ghana. Now it is in Mozambique. You see, it's because the leaders put up a negligent attitude towards the problems of the continent, because we are a big landmass, combined big landmass. We are not an island like Singapore. A lot of people compare African countries to Singapore, and what Ghana was on the same level with Singapore and the South Korea. These are small islands, man. Africa is a huge, gigantic landmass that you cannot develop. You cannot develop Rwanda alone when you have Burundi on the side, full of poverty. You have Uganda in the north is full of poverty, and then you have other countries, Congo, Eastern Congo, on the other side, full of poverty. You can't do it. You can't do it. We have to develop together as Africans. So any problem that is in Mali should concern all of us. So the attitude that has been for a very long time put up by African leaders, whereby Museveni sits in his small country, Uganda, which is even landlocked, and he doesn't care about what is happening in Libya. He doesn't care about what is happening in Mali, Senegal. France is devastating our continent. France is making its own rules on our continent. And we have to resist this. This is unacceptable. African leaders, all of them, they have to put up resistance. He's deciding who we should engage on the continent and who should not engage. It is ridiculous. This attitude, this kind of attitude, is a betrayal of the African people. The African leaders have betrayed the African people for a very long time. And this is what we are coming out as the young generation and saying, no, this cannot continue. We cannot allow France to make rules on this continent. I've been seeing that France is protesting why Mali why Mali engages with Russia, why Niger engages in. Who is France? What does he want from this continent? Have we voted for France to come and govern here democratically? No. So how does he put up a protest without the other African leaders protesting against it? So the Africans as a people, and especially the young generation which is coming up, I would suggest and I would encourage them to look at the continent in its entirety. Otherwise, they will continue to exploit this continent. When people are thinking that they are in Rwanda, they are Rwandese, so they will abandon the issues which are happening in Congo, or they will leave the Central African Republic. This is our continent, all of us as Africans. The borders were put there. It has been repeatedly said for colonialism, and they are still there for colonialism, because that is what they want. They want you to enclose yourself in your small country and say, I'm in Namibia, so that you don't see what is happening in Congo. And they will continue to steal from the Congo. And this is what we have to reject and say, these are our people, these are our resources all over the continent, and we will protect it. We will not allow France, the United States, and its militaries. We have to start a campaign to stop, to remove all these military bases on the African continent. Foreign military bases, Camp Lamois, in Djibouti, all these military bases all over in Senegal, United States militaries in Ghana, in Uganda, Kenya, all these military bases, they have to go. France has to go, has to come out of Gabon, has to come out of the Sahel. We really don't need this. We have the youngest population on the continent. That means we have the ability to protect this continent. They have aging populations. So it is a contradiction. You can't say France, with the aging population of the United States, they are here to protect us. Protect us from what, when we have the youngest generation with the biggest, with the most energy? We have strong young people. So we should be able to protect ourselves. We really don't need foreigners, Europeans, Americans, Australians. And if you look at their record in Afghanistan, Australia, killing, civilians in Afghanistan, soldiers killing, this is not what we want. We have already seen France has been killing innocent people in Mali, Niger. They have been killing people in Senegal, all these countries. France has been there killing innocent people. They have not been brought up for human rights violations. And these things are even on the news. They are in records. They are in reports. France has been killing our people. So I think these are things which we need to look at realistically. And France, United States, and Europeans, their military bases, they have to go. We can't continue to accept this kind of hypocrisy, whereby the United Nations doesn't look at these matters in their entirety, but chooses out isolated cases of the Africans, and what they are trying to do for themselves to benefit themselves. So Africa and Africans, I think that we have to stand together at all costs, the individual countries, to be able to solve these problems.
Yeah, the only thing I think you did not perhaps address, or maybe indirectly you did, is so when the UN does consistently what it wants and running its own agenda, then what is the solution for Africa? Is it to leave UN or remain and struggle or advocate for the reform? I mean, we
Yeah,
have
I
to
think
run.
as Africans, I think we may not even have to come out, even though this has been spoken about a couple of times. And definitely, I would support it if African countries decided that this is a dysfunctional organization that has, consistently refused to be reformed. Uh, we have waited for a long time, and the time we have given it enough time, uh, and now we have realized that they are in a far different, different world from the world which we are seeing, and this is what the young generation actually is seeing. That these guys are in a different world. They are in a world where they want to continue colonialism and domination, and the world has moved away from this kind of mindset. These are people who are hanging on, onto it reminds me of Donald Trump and what he said, that he wants to make America great again. So this is an admission that America is already declined. So he wants to make it great again. So, and people have been talking about this for a very long time, that the United States is declining. Now, what we are seeing is that the African countries, they will choose to do that after our efforts have been exhausted. If we have exhausted ourselves in calling for these reforms, and I would 100%, 1,000% support this move, because if the organization has chosen itself to be used as a tool for neocolonialism and not justice and arbitration of states, you know, there's no reason why I think countries should not start coming out. They will have to start coming out. If people are using the organization for their own, unilateral, objectives, sanctions on innocent people, children dying, 500,000 people in Iraq, for example, they died with the sanctions that were put on Iraq in 1990, in the 1990s by the United States. And the United Nations was on the side watching. People are dying. We said in Israel, Israel is killing people in Palestine, in Gaza, and the United Nations is on the side watching. It has been in the Congo for the last 60 years. Nothing is changing. What we are seeing is increase in child labor in the Congo. Young children are being, subjected to slavery and mines, whereby corporations like Apple are being built, Tesla, all these, these big corporations, Western corporations are being built. So once the United Nations continues on this trajectory, I see that people are going to continue losing trust in it. And definitely, when the African countries say they are pulling out of this organization,
Mhm.
because it has been targeting Africa with its organization, it has been targeting Africa to exploit it, not only to exploit it, but to blackmail Africa. I think that the people will support their leaders to
Yeah.
come out of this organization, and it will not be long, because, like I said, we have a new generation of leaders who have come, and they understand what is going on in the world. They understand what the United States has been doing behind. They understand what colonial powers have been doing all along, and we are not going to accept, hypocrisy that is being peddled around the world. We are going to demand for justice all around the world. So I think this is, for me, this is a move that I would support going forward, that the African countries, through the African Union, have to start reviewing, their membership of the United Nations, because of the direction which it has continued to go, and how we have called for a reform, and the organization has refused to be reformed by these imperialistic powers.
Thank you very much, Brother Kwame Gonza. Moving on, let's talk about Africa's partnership with different parts of the world. Even if we start recently, there was the Africa-Turkey partnership that just happened the last week. Uh, and also there is where the Biden administration called or invited African leaders, selected African leaders, to the uh, on a Zoom meeting, Africa, China. Before I ask to directly comment on a specific partnership of the continent, I would like, to ask you if you can share what are the things. There are pros and cons, of course, when this partnership happens, and what should be as a condition that Africa should put, or any individual sovereign countries should put as a condition before whether it's Turkey or China and come and operate in the country, whether it's in terms of industry or any military or to military. It can be in various ways, but mainly for
Mm,
now, let's talk about the industry one.
mm,
What should
mm,
be the conditions? Why I'm asking is, for example, we see a lot of Chinese partnership in Africa,
mm,
and what we see is there is an issue of, in terms of labor, they bring most of the time their own labor,
mm,
and
mm,
also people who are assigned as a manager, who are leading the project. And also there is an issue of salary, and also there is an issue of dignity, for that matter, how
mm,
people are
mm.
treated in the working area. So yeah, if you can just comment on that, and then later on we dive on, on those specific partnership with different countries.
Yeah, I think we are actually living at interesting times. Uh, like we said, uh, the emergency of different states. There is what a political scientist called Eric Lee from China calls an era of warring states. In this era which we have entered, is an era where cultures, and especially strong cultures, like when we talk about Africa, Africa has a very very strong culture. People like Chinese have very very strong culture background, and Indians also. I think people like in Russia, they have very strong cultural backgrounds. So these countries and these states will be seeking to assert themselves in the world, and so we are living really at interesting times. So that means that countries will not allow any one country to dominate them, to tell them what to do, politically, economically, whether culturally, in anything. Countries will not allow this kind of attitude. So we are living in that era. So this gives Africa an opportunity, because Africa has, we know from the data that Africa has 30% of the world's remaining mineral resources. Uh, and this means that a lot of countries that are trying to industrialize, or those ones who have industrialized and they are at their peak, they will be seeking to engage Africa for these primary resources. And this is what we are seeing with China. And continuously, for the last 30 years, Africa has been selling its commodities to China. And the rise of China actually, when you look at it, it has brought about the development also in Africa to a certain extent. Not the much desired, development, but it has been a moderate development, because China has been building a lot of infrastructure in Africa. And when you talk about things like roads and dams and all other projects, and Africa has been giving its resources out. And to put this in proper context, uh, China's engagement with Africa in the last 30 years, whereby we have even reached a point whereby we have Uh, Africa has a lot of countries among the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. China has pushed a lot of money in Africa, whether it is loans, whether it is in infrastructure and selling of these primary resources which China needs in its manufacturing and industry. China, if you look at the infrastructure it has built in Africa for the last 30 years, that infrastructure actually uh, it, it, it equals or uh, is more than what all the imperialist powers, uh, China, um, I mean the imperialist powers, Europe and the United States, what they built in 600 years. So China has been able to, in its engagement with Africa, been able to achieve that in 30 years. So that is on the side of infrastructure. When you look at the trade, the Europe and the United States, when you look at their trade with Africa, their trade stands at around 56 billion to 60, approximately 60 billion. For the last 600 years, that is their trade with Africa. And when you look at China for the last 30 years, uh, China's trade with Africa stands at around more than $200 billion. The United States and Europe, 60 billion. That is their trade with Africa for the last 600 years. So I think that there is a certain realization among Africans, and it is legitimate that this is even what has caused the alarm in the imperialistic camp, in the neo-colonial camp, that they are trying to, to blackmail Africans into looking at China in a certain way. I'm not saying China is a very perfect partner, but I think China has been a better partner when we look at what imperialists have been doing here. They have been stealing from us a lot. When you look at the report which came out even from the United Nations itself in last year, on illicit financial outflow, most of the money that is flowing out of Africa, up to around 90 billion, according to their report. But even that, they said, is an understatement. 90 billion annually of African money. But some people say that money is up to $200 billion. So that money is flowing out of Africa. And one of the places, the prime places which they said it flows, it was Washington and London. And so what we see is that these countries are stealing from Africa for a very long time. Even President Erdogan of Turkey spoke about it in his recent engagement in the Turkey-Africa summit, that these countries have been stealing from Africa for a very long time. This is an open secret today, that we have got to know this, that they have been robbing Africa. So I think that it's time for Africa to look at these relationships realistically and see who is really a worthy partner for Africa, and then scrutinize our relationships with them. And to be specific, some of the partners have to be written off because they have been here long enough to contribute. And we as Africans, I think that we are no more interested in rhetorics, in rhetorical statements and gestures of human rights and what. You are the ones who have been violating our human rights, and we fought for them and we took them back. And you come around and tell us about human rights. So this is one of the the biggest hypocritic gestures you can speak of, that the Western world comes around to tell us about human rights when we had to push them out of this continent by force when they are imposing themselves on us and violating and killing our people. Belgium killed more than 15 million people in the Congo, around 15 million. It's just ridiculous that the same group of people are turning around to come and tell us about humans. They think that we don't know about these histories. So I think it is time for Africa to evaluate these relationships realistically with data, with history, and say that you people have been here long enough to contribute to this relationship, because a relationship is a two-way, journey is a two-way. We have to have an equal win-win relationship. So if Europe has been benefiting and the United States and Australia and Canada, and they have been stealing from us over here, we are saying that we cannot continue this relationship. For the last 600 years, this is what you have been doing and you have not been changing. So we have to write you off. And then if it comes to China, also we can review and say, you guys have been doing well, but in these areas, we need to review these areas. We need to adjust where you guys are not doing well. You cannot bring here your workers to come and work here. We have a lot of people over here. There is certain conditions we are not supposed to agree on with the Chinese, and it's the same thing with Turkey, who is trying to re-engage Africa. It's the same thing with India, Turkey. We have to look at these countries realistically. India, its economy is not even up to $3 trillion, 2.5 trillion. Turkey, its economy is not even up to $1 trillion. Is up to around $760 billion. So we have to ask questions. As an African continent, in its entirety, our GDP is 3 trillion. So if you, Turkey, you are coming to us, what do you want to engage us in? What are you coming to to contribute? India, our GDP is bigger than yours. So these are the advantages of negotiating with a unified stance as Africans, with a unified force. Our economy, when we combine it together, we have more power, you see. So we can now sit with these people on the table and say, what are you offering? Turkey, you are coming with $760 billion. Let us look at your population. What can Africa sell you? Not merely selling off primary products, which are going to be used also in our industrialization process. So these relationships, I think this is, we, the young generation, how we have to look at them, not so that we can stop exporting, primary materials, because we ourselves also have to industrialize the continent as Africa.
Okay, there are these partnerships that are made, between Africa, Turkey, Africa, China, and Africa, US. If you can just quickly comment on, on the Africa US partnership, or the recent meeting where the South African president said he will not attend, and he did not attend. And of course, Ethiopia were not invited, perhaps for obvious reasons, and there are many others who were not invited on that.
Yes. Yes.
How can you call it partnership? And isn't it an insult?
Yeah, it is not really even a partnership. These countries have realized, countries from Europe, the United States, and all these Western countries, because they have been doing this, they have been going on with this hypocrisy and for a very long time, and no one has been holding them accountable. When you look at the media, like the media, what they did, and they are trying to blackmail Ethiopia, and Africans are now, they are more enlightened. They are more conscious about these things. So we were able to hold them accountable. You guys have been destroying countries all over the world. Now we will hold you accountable. You can't bring this chaos again to Africa. You can't continue to bring it to Africa and you bring it to Ethiopia. This is where our headquarters is. This is where the headquarters of the African Union is. We can't allow you. So we can't allow you to continue on this trajectory. We will hold you accountable. So for a very long time, they have been peddling this hypocrisy. I was looking at an article in Al Jazeera which came out in the same week that President Biden was holding the democracy summit, and online democracy summit, and inviting other African leaders. And the article in Al Jazeera, which Al Jazeera itself actually has come to be looked at as sort of an imperialist mouthpiece. But Al Jazeera was itself saying that, is this democracy or hypocrisy? Democracy versus hypocrisy. Biden holds the summit on democracy. So you can see that they themselves they are struggling. They are clamoring to save their image, because the people of the world have realized what this guy is about. We have understood what this guy is about. We are saying that no more. We can't move around this GM journey. So we can't continue on this trajectory. This is hypocrisy. What Biden was doing is just mere hypocrisy. Even what a young child, a small child can see. So those, even I believe that even those he invited on the back, they were mocking him. So there is a few things which they can do, intimidate. Some of them they attend because of intimidation. They are being intimidated. They fear that maybe they will carry out a coup d'etat, or in their countries, and remove them from power. But others outright they attend, but they know that this is hypocrisy that these guys are talking about. And the United States is trying so hard to hang on to superpowerdom. But it is very clear. Even an article, I was looking at an article last week that came out and said that China has surpassed, in 5 years, China is going to surpass the United States. It was on Harvard. It came from Harvard. That article came from, a report came from Harvard, which was written that China is surpassing the United States in all the critical technologies of the 21st century within 5 years. The next 5 to 10 years, China will surpass the United States. But actually, from data that was came out long ago, we think that China long time it will not even take 5 years or 10 years. It long time surpassed the United States. When you read a certain
Yeah.
book, yeah, in those critical technologies that are going to shape the 22nd century, or that are going to close the 21st century. When you read a book by a gentleman called Jeremy Rifkin, and he's talking about the third industrial revolution. Jeremy Rifkin makes a case for the third industrial revolution, and he says that an industrial revolution occurs when three critical technologies come into convergence, and that those technologies are transport, energy. There's a revolution in energy and how the world is going to be powered. And then there is that revolution in energy, brings about a revolution in transport, and at the same time in communication. So those three technologies converge: communication, transport, and energy. They converge together, and then that is when an industrial revolution occurs. And that is what we are seeing that China is already leading in. Actually, he pointed it out. China is leading in transportation now. Renewable energy. China manufactures the biggest number of wind turbines, solar panels. This is all renewable energy, because this is the type of technology that is going to power the next industrial revolution. When you talk about communication, China is already leading in 5G communication and 6G, because they are already, they are almost launching 6G. Huawei is almost launching. And when we talk about transport, electric cars, China is already leading in electric cars, high-speed trains. America is in antiquated. He has an antiquated, trains which are in 1900 trains. So they have been already surpassed. When you talk about aviation, maybe that is where China is struggling to catch up. But the critical technologies which are shaping the closing of the 21st century and shaping the third industrial revolution, as Jeremy Rifkin puts it, China is already leading. So I think the Harvard report is even itself is very, very late in its observation. These things have been already spoken about by strong economists like Ray Dalio, and all the other economists who are powerful economists. So the United States is trying to hang on through deceit. It has been controlling the world through deception, intimidation, violence, and all these things. Now it is seeing that the violence cannot work again. The deception, it cannot work again. So it is trying everything. The Western world is trying everything it can,
Yeah.
but it will not work. It will not work, because we are living in a far different world. They are living in a world which we have left behind, and they think that they can hang on. The world doesn't need the type of leadership they have been giving for a very long time. And people are tired. People want some peace. People are tired of the wars they have been spreading, violence all over. People want some peace. People want development. People, they don't want to live on rhetorics of human rights and what, and you are the same people who are violating the human rights, and you are telling other people about human rights. People want food on the table. People want to see development. In Africa, we want to see high-speed trains. We want to see renewable energy all over the continent. This is what we want to see. We want to see advanced communication. on the continent. We want to see industrialization, rapid industrialization on the continent. We want to see rapid economic growth on the continent. This is what we want to see. We don't want people coming around with rhetorics, empty rhetorics, which don't provide anything. So I think this is where the world is moving. So Biden and his rhetorics, I think they will fall on deaf ears, and it's a waste of time. It's actually a waste of time. And these are schemes which we have already seen what is happening in it. So that is
Yeah.
what I see. And Turkey, I think I've already commented on Turkey. I think that Turkey, it has come well so far, the way they are coming, but they have to come in a very transparent way, because, like I said, uh, any person who engages with Africa, they are dealing with a different breed of leaders. There's a new generation of leaders that has risen out of Africa, and actually the France, I think, to a certain extent, has started seeing this, but it is still stuck in that arrogance, that imperialist arrogance of colonialism, because last September it called the France Africa Summit and invited only the youth, because it saw the emergence of a new breed of leaders who are far removed from that old mindset, but it's still,
Some
gets,
fiery African youths that
yes,
they
yes,
were
but it
confronted
still
by.
gets stuck in that arrogance. It still gets stuck. They think that we don't know. The youth, we are trying to tell the President Macron, that you guys, we know what you are doing, and he's saying that we should forget about the past. We should focus on the future. We can't focus on the future when your attitude is the same as in the past. So we want a new sort of relationship, and that relationship has to be governed by our conditions, not your conditions. And this is where we want to see our content going. So I think if Turkey uh, comes into Africa with that right mindset, I think that Turkey may be able to get it. It may be able to get a reasonable engagement with Africa. If it doesn't come with that hypocrisy of building mosques all over the continent, this is not what we need. That we need mosques, we need worshiping. I think in Africa we are more spiritual than anything else. So we really don't need mosques. We need industry here. We need industries here. We need technology. These are the most important things which we need. We need to engage our people in technology and technology transfer. If drones are being built here, if you are trying to sell drones to Ethiopia, trying to sell drones to Somalia or Nigeria or Senegal, these drones should be built here so that we can have this relationship, which is equal, win-win relationship, whereby you give us some of the technology here, some of the skills, so that our people can learn, not build mosques all over the continent. This is not, that I would see it as a very wrong move if you start coming here to try to build the mosques and not build industries, because we have enough churches and enough mosques already. So I think this is how I see the relationship with these countries.
Help me with this one to understand, and perhaps also our viewers with it. How do you view this partnership and the way our leaders really are there to attend, and then on the other hand, there are some urgent issues in the continent, and you really need to sit down, whether it's via Zoom or physically. You have to have that summit, but still you cannot do that summit, but still you go for those partnership when you are invited, by
Mm, mm.
non-African states.
Yes, yes.
uh, yeah, I just find it very ironical. So yeah,
Yeah, it
help
is.
us with that. Yeah.
It is not only you actually who sees this as an ironic approach, to the problems. The approach of the African heads of state. This approach which they have been putting up, it is negligent. It is irresponsible. Like we said, they have neglected the rest of the continent, and they concentrate on. They are like the 14th century kings, which they have been for a very long time criticizing. People like Museveni, they have been criticizing that the kings, they refuse to unify to defend Africa from the invaders who became enslavers of the people. The same attitude is the same attitude which he is putting up. They were advancing their own, personal interests. When we look at, for example, what is happening between Uganda and Rwanda now, You see that presidents have put up their own personal interests to the interests of the people. The people between Uganda and Rwanda, they want to trade with each other. They want to live with each other. They are relatives. The people in Uganda and Rwanda, they are relatives. But you see that these people who are modern day kings of the 14th century, they are still having this mindset. And this is what neocolonials have been, the enslavers have been exploiting. So the African leaders, many of them, they are stuck in that old mindset of begging, going to these people to beg for aid. And all of them is the same group, and the same group with the neo-colonialists, that we say that the neo-colonialists, they are still stuck in the world where they were controlling the world. And we used to say yes, everything, yes, aggression, deception, blackmailing, and all those things. Those, and we have moved away from that world whereby the West controlled the world. We have moved. So our leaders too, like we said at the beginning, 76 years, 80 years, 89 years, 86, Paul Biya, these kind of groups, they are stuck in that kind of world, that they are supposed to beg and get aid and wait for foreign aid. If foreign aid doesn't come, they are not thinking of how we should develop our countries. As if the countries, United States, how it developed, it was alien, and Europe, it was aliens which came with foreign aid and dropped in France, or dropped in the United States. It is not aliens which came with foreign aid. So we have to structure our continent in such a way that we as a people take control of our economies. So the African leaders who have been neglecting the continent for a very, very long time, we have to hold them accountable. We have to say the direction where you are going is undesirable to us as African people. The direction, this is not where we want to go. We want you to look at the whole continent. And I think that the young generation, this is the direction where we are going. This is the direction we are taking. That the negligency and abandonment of parts of the continent to neo-colonialists to exploit, while certain leaders are in corners, but when they are invited by these neo-colonialists to summits to take tea and even something which President Kagame already mentioned about that, it's like the African leaders, they are waiting to be invited to Paris and Washington to discuss Africa's problems. We have started looking at the continent in its entirety, and we think that our problems should be discussed here. We ourselves, we don't need aid to come from Britain or Europe. They already don't have aid. They are suffering. Their economies are suffering. So what aid is there to give us? What aid is there for the United States to give us when it is losing more than 1 million people, to COVID? They don't have any aid to give us. Whether it is vaccines, we should be able to manufacture the vaccines here. Whether it is industry, we are in a much better position now since independence to build the industry here. We should evolve our own political system. We should evolve our own economic system. So I think that the new generation, our new generation, which is coming up, I think has caught this idea. It has caught this understanding. We have come to an understanding that we can build this continent on our own thought and in its entirety. We don't need even to neglect any part of the continent. So that old mindset, I believe, is going because a new generation of leaders has come up.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brother Gonza, for that. So finally, we have discussed all the topics that were proposed. So I will give you the floor. It's always good to remind the African youth, the Africans, the diasporans, Africans at home and in the
Yes.
diaspora,
Yes.
what's happening, the hopes. I will give you the floor to say that message.
Thank you, Sister Mahlet. I think that it has been a very fruitful conversation this evening to reflect on our continent and how it relates to the rest of the world, whether it is the Chinese, the Europeans who have been exploiting here, those French and Americans, Canadians, Australians, who have been exploiting not only our resources for the last 600 years, but they also exploited and killed our people. A lot of our people, millions of our people have been dying, and they have been holding us back into, developing. We are in a new era, and that era calls for a new mindset, a new way of thinking. And that thinking, it is only the African youth who can be able to hold it. That thinking is the African youth who can be able to drive it forward. The new world calls for independence in thought, not aid. We know what is happening all around the world. The African people have been disrespected for a very long time, and slavery, colonialism, now neo-colonialism. The same people who have been talking about human rights, they are the same people who have been violating all these rights. Whether it is a political rights, we have seen our leaders who have been killed for a very long time. Whether you're talking about Patrice Lumumba, whether you're talking about Marcus Garvey, whether you're talking about Malcolm X, who we realized recently that he was killed by the FBI, or Martin Luther King Jr., all these were killed by the American FBI and CIA. Coups have been conducted in Africa. We know the West has done all these things, and these sins have been committed. But then what are we supposed to do? We as Africans around the world, and when I talk about Africans around the world, I speak about Africans on the continent and all people of African descent, like what Kwame Nkrumah said, that all people of African descent, whether they live in North America, South America, Caribbean, or anywhere, all people of African descent are Africans and belong to the African nation. So when I speak about Africans, that is what I mean, that Africans on the continent and all people of African descent around the world. We need, as the youth, to stand up and protect the continent because the information has been liberalized, and there's no any other age that is better for us to build the African continent than now, when information is out there. When we are speaking about Africa, we need to speak about Africa in its entirety, not individual countries, Kenya, Uganda, Congo, Rwanda, Senegal, South Africa. These countries, when we emphasize them, we open doors for our continued exploitation. So the youth in South Africa and the youth in Mali, the youth in Senegal should be all concerned about the happenings in Ethiopia, the happenings in Congo. And we should have our ears, we should read, we should learn about our history and the exploitation that our people have gone through. We should learn about the people who have been exploiting and stealing, because the information now is out there on the internet. The people who have been exploiting our continent, like Nkrumah said, they don't change in substance, they only change in form. How they deal with us is the only thing which they change. We can see, like what Nkrumah said, that neocolonialism or imperialism doesn't change in substance, it only changes in form. And we can see what France was trying to do. It was engaging in the past African leaders. In the past, they were engaged in slavery. They came with colonialism. Now France are freak, engaging African leaders. Now they are changing to engage the youth. So we know we should be able to see through all these tactics, that they are trying to change the form, but the substance is the same. They still want to colonize. The United States, on the other side, it uses aggression. It has military bases all over the continent. These are things we are supposed to reject because we are smarter. We should build our own industries on the continent. We should have our own private sector on the continent. We should not wait for private sector, to come from outside the continent. This is not the way we are going to build our continent. It is not sustainable that way, to wait for private investors to come on the continent and then we say, now private investment. We should start where we are with the small which we have. We have so many resources. We have so much resources compared to our ancestors, what they had in the 1960s when they are fighting for independence and fighting for civil rights movement in the United States. We have so much resources. Or even our ancestors, as going back as 1791, when they were fighting for independence in Haiti, which opened the door for the abolition of slavery. They had meager resources, but they were able to fight through. So I believe that we are also in that position, and much better, much more better position to be able to fight off this neocolonialism that is, engulfing our continent today. We have fought off neocolonialism in Ethiopia, and we have won it. We have won it, and it's the same spirit. We don't need to stop in Ethiopia. We need to push this to all over the continent and encounter France and what it is doing. It has to stop. It has to stop. The United States has to go. Britain has to go. France has to go. They have to go back to Europe, and the United States, they should take their military bases. Like we said, we have the youngest population. We are able to protect this continent and in its entirety and develop it. If we have the youngest population, then we have the energy, we have the skills. Like we said, 80% of literacy rate on the African continent. We should be able to handle each of the areas in which we need to develop technology, everything. We should be able to reconstruct our continent with some form of plan, or some form of plan called the Rapid Africa Plan, to be able to transform this continent within the next 20 years. The next decade is the decade of African unity. And so we should tirelessly, and relentlessly work for a union of African states so that we can have the next 15 to 20 years for reconstruction. Reconstruction, that means taking back what belongs to us, stopping all those ones who have been exploiting our continent. President Magufuli has shown the way. He showed what to do, and what to do is to stop the foreign countries, foreign companies and corporations that are exploiting our resources and sending them to Europe and sending them to the United States. President Magufuli has shown the way. President and Prime Minister Abiy in Ethiopia has shown the way that Africans, we can solve our own problems. And we also have shown him support. So the old breed of leaders, we should argue against them. We should put up a struggle against them, and they say this is not where we want to go, because we are the majority now. Africa, 30 years and below, 70% of the population is 30 years and below. So we should be able to put up a strong resistance and shape our continent and where we want it to go. I want to thank Connect Africa, and I bring you warm greetings, and I want to say good night to you from the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute, Rapid Africa Plan, and the World Pan-African Movement, the organizations to which I belong. And I want to say thank you very much to Connect Africa, Defend Ethiopia, and Sister Mahlet, thank you so much, and good night to all our viewers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brother Gonza. Yes, indeed. It just reminded me listening to that speech. We are indeed in the time of a new era, a new thinking, and I'm sure millions of African youth share your view. And I would like to end it, that theme you said for the next decade. The next decade is of its African unity. Let just that sink in, for the youth to claim it and act upon it. Thank you very much once again. And we'll Connect Africa. We try to bring you current issues happening in the continent, to bring you on a daily basis, if not as often as possible. That was it for tonight. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay.